Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Kansas City Royals. We are at the start of free agency here in the 2035 to 2036 offseason. You can see that the Royals do have some money to spend. Probably going to be a relatively quiet offseason for this team. Feel that although we do need to add some pitchers, and we will look to do that through free agency and or potentially trading away some players, most likely some excess outfielders that we have in our system. Don't really have anything that we need to do as far as our everyday position players. Love our outfielders at the major league level, really like our infielders at the major league level, and we like our catchers too. If there was an opportunity in trade to add an above average offensive catcher who's also above average to excellent defensively, we'd certainly think about doing that, but probably going to be pretty costly to pick up somebody like that in trade, and there's certainly nobody like that in the free agent market this year. So I think it's primarily going to be focused on trying to figure out what to do with the pitchers who are available as free agents. There's definitely some high-end talent out there, but not a ton of starting pitchers. Fortunately, we are probably set with our top four starters, certainly set with our second, third, and fourth starters with Caleb Lagerwell, Eddie Chavera, and Bryce Hillman. The biggest question for the Royals probably as we begin this offseason is what to do with our ace, Ben Borgman. He's now wrecked physically. He pitched in just 6 games at the major league level this past year because of multiple injuries this season. He was reasonably effective when he was pitching. He put up a 0.8 WAR in those 6 games. And then fortunately he was healthy for the playoffs where he was even better, putting up a 1.0 WAR in 4 starts. So in 10 starts in the regular season and the playoffs this year, he put up a 1.8 WAR. And when you look at his pitching profile, he certainly can still be a front-end pitcher on a good team. The question with him is how many games we're going to get out of him. If I could be guaranteed we're going to get 25 starts and 130, 135, 140 innings pitched out of him next year, and he would be healthy for the playoffs, I'd happily keep him because I'm pretty confident that he's going to be a productive pitcher when he is healthy. Certainly over the course of his career, he's been well above average, and he has been excellent since he came to Kansas City and got out of Colorado. The issue is if we get 5 or 6 starts in the majors from him next season and he's not healthy for the playoffs, we've basically created a $20 million hole in our roster next season. And if he's injured all year and or ineffective, that increases the likelihood that he's going to opt into his final year with us, which will create a $20 million hole for the 2037 season. He's also not willing to waive his no-trade clause, so it's kind of perhaps a moot point to even talk about this if we do shop him around. There's not even anyone who's interested in him right now, and that could be because of the no-trade clause, but you could argue that we're stuck with him, but I don't really totally feel that way. As I talked about, he's still a very effective pitcher when he's healthy. I mean, he won the Cy Young Award in 2034. He was announced as a Cy Young Award winner literally like 370 days ago. So he's been a pretty effective pitcher, and it's just the injuries with him. And I do think we have a track record for kind of managing fragile and wrecked pitchers reasonably well. If you go back to our previous ace, Spencer Bauer, he's wrecked physically. He's a free agent right now, so he would be a guy that we could consider adding. but he was always in a pretty tenuous physical position with us. I think he was fragile or wrecked throughout his career with us. And you can see his last 4 seasons with us. We got over 150 innings out of him every year. We got at least 32 starts out of him everywhere. Now, we limited his pitch count very significantly, but we won a Cy Young Award with him in 2027 when we won our first World Series with these Royals. So we were able to manage him pretty effectively. And you can see, until the last couple years, the Braves did a pretty good job getting some innings out of him too. He's really kind of taken a dive now in his mid-30s. Unfortunately, that's kind of the age that Borgman is right now, so that might not be a great sign. But I think if we limit his pitches, and we're going to even drop it just while we're thinking about it to 80 from 90, and we use an aggressive tiredness hook with him, hopefully we can get him through the season. And as I said, if we get 130, 140 innings out of him and he's healthy for the playoffs, having a guy like him on the staff gives us a better chance to three-peat in the 2036 season than not having a player with his talent. So given that we're kind of stuck with him anyways, I think we're going to make the most out of the situation. So we're pretty solid with our top 4 starters at this point. Obviously, health an issue for everybody. The good thing is that Caleb Lagerwell is normal in terms of his injury proneness. Bryce Hillman is durable, and Eddie Chavera is also durable. So hopefully those guys will continue to go out and do what they did this past season, where between the 3 of them, they averaged about 195 plus innings between the 3 of them. And then, we're going to have a hole to fill in the back of our rotation with a 5th starter. Certainly the simplest option for that is going to be to potentially promote Dan Keogh, another durable arm, which is great. He was our 2nd-round draft pick 7 years ago at this point. Was respectable in AAA this year. Kind of got lit up in 4 starts at the major league level. The concern with him is he doesn't throw that hard, and he doesn't have great movement on his pitches, so he's going to give up a lot of home runs. Everything else with him suggests that he can be a pretty respectable pitcher, but obviously if you're giving up 6 home runs in 15 at-bats, it's going to be tough to be, or in 15 innings pitched, it's going to be tough to be successful. So not convinced that he is going to be a long-term member of our rotation, but certainly could give him a chance. We will be giving him a chance at the major league roster next year. The question is whether he's kind of a long reliever or our 5th starter, and he'll probably end up doing both at times when injuries hit. And then behind him, we've got Marco Estrada, who we had split the year between AA and AAA last year. You can see he was really effective in AA, somewhat less effective in Omaha, but we still got over 230 innings out of him. So love the fact that he's also durable, good personality. Profiles is perhaps a slightly above average major league pitcher. His stuff is only average, but he does have a 5-pitch arsenal of respectable to above average pitches. And he's got, solid movement and good control. So I think he can potentially be a pretty effective back of the rotation starter for us. So he's another option also. So the positive thing is that we don't have to go crazy looking for a starter, I don't think. We can kind of invest the money we have in relievers. And that's probably what we're going to think about as we kick off free agency here. And looking at the free agent pitchers, Santiago Suarez and Jonathan Velasquez are kind of the 2 top relievers out there. Suarez, 30 years old, durable, 161 ERA or 160 ERA plus 74 FIP minus over the course of his career. So he's been an incredibly effective pitcher, looking for about $14.5 million though. Jonathan Velasquez looking for even more. also has been a very effective pitcher over the course of his career with a 137 ERA plus and a 75 FIP minus. He's normal durability, a little older and looking for a little more money. But both of them would immediately take over as our closer, or either of them would immediately take over as our closer. In the past, when Kansas City had a smaller budget, we let real good pitchers like Austin Roberts and Reed Galliman go when they were relievers who started getting up to the point of potentially making 14, 15, $16 million kind of numbers. Given that we are a win now team, and given that our budget and payroll have expanded a lot over the last 14 seasons, we'd consider bringing on one of those guys in a short contract. I don't think we want to get locked up with either of them for the long term, so that's something important for us to look at. Velasquez looking at $16 million a year for 4 years. That's probably not going to work. Maybe Suarez is looking for a little less money, but how many years is he looking for? He's looking for a 1-year deal. So Suarez is definitely one for us to think about. AL reliever of the year and an all-star back in 2032. Certainly would be, as I talked about, would go right into the closer role for this Kansas City team, which we have a need for because our closer from last year, Felipe Tejada, is also a free agent. And he's 7 years older, and he's looking for even more money, even though he too has been a very effective pitcher over the course of his career. So I think if we were going to go to any of these guys, it would be Santiago Suarez. But we're also going to still take a look at who's potentially available, maybe not necessarily in trade, but who just kind of meets a pretty respectable profile of above average stuff, solid movement, and solid control. And you can see there's a lot of free agents out there that meet that criteria. And then there's a fair amount of pitchers throughout baseball that meet that criteria, including 3 on the Royals. Borgman and Lagerwell are starters. Jesus Mercado, who we just traded for from Seattle at the end of the season, and then Min-Ho Choi, who we declined his option for $6 million after he was not all that exciting in his first year over in the United States. Let's see what he's looking for in terms of a contract now. And he's looking for $6.1 million. So given that we didn't exercise a $6 million option on him and we paid him a $600,000 payout instead, certainly not at the point where we're going to offer him that kind of money. But if we could bring him back for less, he's certainly still in the mix. And although there were some pretty interesting pitchers on the list of pitchers throughout Major League Baseball that we put together, didn't seem like there were any obvious trades to have. People were asking for a lot or just weren't interested even for relievers. So I think I'm intrigued by the fact that Suarez is only looking for a 1-year deal because I don't want to lock up a reliever for big money for the long term. But given that we are basically only focused on our bullpen this offseason, if I can bring one of the best pitchers on that's available in a 1-year contract and not make a long-term commitment, I think it's something to think about. Now, I don't want to give him $14.6 million, but we'll start the discussion at $12.5 million, and we'll increase the potential bonus if he's an all-star, and at least get the conversation going with Mr. Santiago Suarez. And he's willing to think about it. I think there's definitely a chance that someone else would come in with a bigger offer for him, but 1 year, $12.5 million for a closer, given that we've got money to spend and we don't really have any major holes to fill, I think is potentially not the worst thing for us to do, particularly with the fact that Suarez is durable. So hopefully if he does join us, we'll be able to have him healthy all year and get, 80 to 90 to 100 innings out of him. And one other thing that I do want to do while I'm thinking about it here is to bump up our ticket price just slightly. You can see we're basically sold out almost every game last year at $39 a ticket. But the year before, when we also won the World Series and we increased our ticket price to just $40, you can see that we, lost almost 1.5 million fan, or almost 150,000 fans. So about 2,000 fans a game difference by just that little increase in price up to $40. So we're gonna split the difference, try to generate a little extra revenue, but not go all the way to 40, and see what 39.50 will do for this upcoming season in terms of our ability to sell season tickets. Obviously, fan interest is off the charts. Loyalty is great. So hopefully we can, as I said, generate a small amount more by raising the ticket prices 50 cents and hopefully keep the stands filled next year. We've simmed ahead a few days into December. Just heard back from Santiago Suarez a couple days ago. Thinks that it's he likes our offer so far. So apparently he's not getting a huge market developing for him. Would obviously be nice to get him locked up in our closer role, and then after that we'd probably be mostly looking for at least one additional left-handed arm out of the bullpen, and then a second arm for the bullpen with less preference whether it's a lefty or righty. And we have lost Jesus Bibbs, who pitched 1 year for us last season, ended up signing for $7 million for a 1-year deal with the Dodgers. We probably would have given him that. Last time we were negotiating with him, he was looking for a guaranteed role as a starting pitcher, a no-trade clause, and I think around $7.8 or $7.9 million a year for those 4 years. So looks like he is expecting a spot in the starting rotation from the Dodgers, which, given the fact that that third pitch of his is a pretty mediocre changeup, probably won't go incredibly well if they do put him into that role. And after about a decade with the Royals, Tyler Bosma is also gone. He signed for $3.36 million, also a 1-year deal with Kansas City. He was our 5th starter last year, solid year, 15-8, 3.99 ERA. But given that his movement and his control are both kind of moving in the wrong direction, and he had a league best BABIP against him last year, thought is he's probably going to continue to give up a lot of homers next year. He's also 36 years old and is fragile physically. So although, as I said, he's been with the Royals for over 9 years in the majors, and is been a really good starter for us, led the league in saves for us once, been an important member of our pitching staff for most of the past decade. We were willing to let him go, so hope he does well in Cincinnati. And we're still waiting to hear back from Santiago Suarez. Supposedly he favors our offer, but it's been out there for over 2 weeks at this point. So we're going to start spending a little time trying to figure out who else we might want to add to the staff. Mentioned that we needed a left-handed pitcher, so Braylon Gonzalez certainly stands out. Don't love the fact that he's fragile. Also looking for pretty good money for a player who's 36 years old. He's a little more effective against lefties than against righties, but I think we might be able to find a more economical option than him. Jose Flores, he's really a one-pitch pitcher. Does not interest me all that much. He also is more effective against lefties than he is against righties, which is kind of what we'd be looking for. I like the fact that he's durable, but not a lot of movement on his pitches, and he's really a one-pitch guy with that sinker. Thus far at the major league level, he's been pretty well below average with a 92 ERA plus and a 125 FIP minus. So I don't think Flores is the answer either. we'll continue to do some searching, not just of the free agents, but also see if there's anyone on the trade block. Right now, trade block generally not all that exciting, but there are a couple lefties out there, and Brandon Barriera looks like an average-ish major league pitcher. John Alvey, again, not all that exciting. The top end is closer Trent Jones. Nice profile, a reliever with 5 pitches is kind of interesting, but he's wrecked physically, making a ton of money. Would certainly need the Mets to want to keep a big chunk of his contract if we were going to do anything for him. I'm guessing they will take just about anything for him because they just want to get that contract off the books. He was pretty effective last year. He wants to be in the starting rotation, though, which for a pitcher with 30 stamina is kind of a interesting demand. Just see what they are looking for him. And again, I'm sure they'll take anything for him to get him off the books. Apparently not. That might be just that we don't have space for him. Is that why that's not working? I'll play around with that a little bit. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be anything to do there. We could fit him on the roster, obviously, if the Mets keep 50% of his salary. But if the Mets do that, they want a pretty important player back from us. So I wasn't really all that excited about Jones anyways, but just figured I would see what the cost was going to be, and it looks like the cost for him is pretty high. So hopefully we can get Santiago signed up as soon as possible. It would be great if Suarez gets back to us in the next couple of weeks, and we at least know before the calendar turns to 2036 that we've got our closer wrapped up for next year. And another expected loss to the pitching staff. Last year's closer, Felipe Tejada, signed with the Dodgers for $11.9 million, and he does have a vesting option, so it was a 2-year deal. Would certainly prefer if we get Suarez for only a little bit more money. He's younger than Tejada. He's durable, and we don't have to make a 2-year commitment to him. So certainly still hope that contract works out. And the Mets look willing to send us a mediocre second baseman for the young outfielder Mike McNeil. That really doesn't interest me. And finally, we do have Santiago Suarez on board. The fans like that. We like that too. $12.5 million, so not a long-term commitment. Happy to have him on board as our closer for next season, though. He'll certainly go right into that closer role, I am sure, when Bobby Crosby starts thinking about his pitching staff. Suarez will be our closer in 2036. So excited to see what he can do for us. And taking a look at this potential pitching staff, obviously Keogh isn't even on the major league roster right now. So I feel like we've probably got our starting rotation set. But right now with solid middle reliever, Nomar Medina is a lefty. And then Bryce Hubbard, who's more of a long reliever, could start for us as a lefty. Definitely need to kind of turn our attention to finding a left-handed arm that can help us. The one positive thing that we have on that front is that although I had mentioned that Dan Keogh is going to end up on the major league roster next year, either as a long reliever or a starter, Marco Estrada is also in the mix, and he is a left-hander. I think he's definitely more of a pure back end of the rotation starter for us. Still definitely want another left-handed arm out of the bullpen, but the need for multiple left-handed arms out of the bullpen would be diminished a little bit if we do end up having Estrada on the team at some point down the line. And I think we may have found at least one of our left-handed pitchers for next year. We had talked earlier about Braylon Gonzalez and Jose Flores. Weren't necessarily thrilled with either of them. But Gabe Pryor, he's fragile, which we don't love. He doesn't have incredible stuff, but he does have really good movement, solid control. He's a 29-year-old who throws about 100 miles an hour. He's really a two-pitch pitcher with a fastball and a slider. Good personality. The issue is he wants to be a starter, and he's not a starter. But when you look at his ratings, he's definitely more effective against left-handed batters than he is against right-handed batters. And he's only looking for $1.5 million. So I would love to add him as a left-handed arm out of the bullpen. I think the big question with him is going to be whether he is insistent on being in the starting rotation. That definitely seems like the role that he's looking for. We are going to offer him a little less money, and we're also going to not offer him a role as a starter and see what he thinks. And he's willing to at least think about it. So if we could bring him on as a bullpen arm for $1.3 million next year, I think that would be a pretty solid addition to our pitching staff. And we've made it to the Rule 5 draft. We had thought about protecting a few players. We've only got 36 on our 40-man roster right now, but there was nobody here of the Rule 5 eligible players that we felt had such incredible potential or such incredible ability right now that we wanted to protect them. So it's possible we may lose a player or two. If so, it kind of is what it is. Obviously, last year did incredible in the Rule 5 draft with the acquisition of Javi Medina, who had a brilliant rookie year for us and looks like he can be a big part of our future as a pretty prominent bat in our lineup, hopefully for many years to come. Typically in the Rule 5 draft, we've kind of been able to find an interesting bullpen arm or two, and given that that's kind of our biggest need right now, the hope is that maybe a pitcher or two can ultimately make our 26-man roster are available in the Rule 5. And we will be picking last by virtue of the best record in baseball and the World Series championship. Jorge Diaz was taken from us. He is a 35-year-old middle infielder, going to be 36 at the start of next year. Has a good personality and is pretty versatile defensively. And he did play a little bit with us in 2033 and 2035, but didn't want to get into a position of giving him a guaranteed major league contract. So we'll see whether or not the Red Sox are able to keep him up with their major league team all of next year. Scouting director Travis Lee recommends that we go with a starting pitcher, Jose Solomon, 28-year-old, 5'10", right-hander. He's a, back end of the rotation kind of guy. Seems like he could be decently effective at the major league level. He's got good stamina. He's got a really nice slider, a really nice changeup, and an acceptable sinker. So his stuff is decent. His control is good. He doesn't have the best movement in the world, but he is a ground ball pitcher who throws in the mid-90s. So you would hope that homers aren't a total issue with him. But although if you look at his track record, he still gives up a lot of dingers. 22 and 115 innings in the major league level in 2033. A sickly 27 home runs in less than 100 innings in 2034. And then 12 and 69 innings with a 6 ERA for Atlanta last year. So he's been pretty ineffective as a major league pitcher. But he's also, started 63 games, and I don't think he's really a starter. I think you'd feel better with him coming out of the bullpen, but 89 ERA plus, 116 FIP minus. I hope we can find someone more interesting than Solomon. It's definitely not the most exciting Rule 5 draft. I think we're going to disagree with Travis Lee and his recommendation of Jose Solomon and bring on Matt Thompson, a 26-year-old who's making the major league minimum. He's played less than a season in the majors with the Miami Marlins. He's been reasonably effective while he's been in the majors. You can see a 102 ERA plus, 86 FIP minus, over 66 and a third innings pitched. No guarantee that he's going to make the team. He is not a starter. That third pitch changeup is brutal, but he's got a pretty good curve and a pretty good fastball, so he's got decent stuff. His movement and control are potentially suspect. Got a good personality, ground ball pitcher that throws in the mid-90s. I don't think there's any guarantees that he's going to make our 26-man roster, but I certainly don't mind bringing him to camp on a minimum salary and seeing whether or not it works out. Now in the second round, scouting director doesn't recommend that we take anybody. There is one other pitcher who I think we're going to take, Juan Munoz, who is a 22-year-old. He's never pitched above high A ball. He's got a pretty good personality. He's not really ready for the majors yet, but he is a left-handed arm, which we could use. You look at his ratings and, he's better against lefties than he is against righties, but he's not really ready for the majors against either of them right now. You can see he's got a lot of development still to do in terms of his stuff, his movement, and particularly his control. But he could have a plus fastball and a plus sinker. I think it's unlikely that we're going to be able to keep him on the major league roster all year. I think it's unlikely that he's going to be good enough to make the major league roster. But given that we are still kind of on the search for potential left-handed arms out of the bullpen, I think he does have potential to be a decent major league lefty in a few years. The question is going to come down to, does a team that is competing hopefully for a World Series championship want to have him kind of be the last guy out of your bullpen, or do we want someone who's going to be hopefully a more productive major league pitcher next year? So I think there's a pretty good chance that we're going to end up sending him back to the Angels, but it's a free option to at least see what he looks like in camp. So we are going to go ahead and select Juan Munoz with our second pick in the Rule 5 draft. And you can see it was a relatively active Rule 5 draft. The Rangers and the Red Sox each actually picked 3 players. Number of teams, including the Royals, picked 2. I think there's a pretty decent chance that Thompson will end up making our Major League roster. Juan Munoz, definitely more questionable. He's certainly not ready, or doesn't appear to be ready to be a major league pitcher right now. But again, if we're short on lefties and we have some injuries in spring training, could he be the 13th and final pitcher on our roster? I guess there's a chance. So we'll see how the rest of the offseason and spring training goes, and maybe Munoz and or Thompson will stick around on the 26-man roster when we break camp. And as we get to the end of December, we decided to shop Rodolfo Falcone, another one of our corner outfielders. Certainly profiles as a nice 4th or 5th outfielder. You could start him if you needed to. Typically, you'd want a little bit better bat and a corner outfielder. He does have the ability to also play first base and center field. And he hit 325 in AAA and 308 in 200 at-bats with the major league team last year. But definitely does not have a long-term role with our team. So the hope is that we'll be able to get an interesting player back in return. Don't know that that's going to happen or not, and we don't have to trade him right now. But if we could particularly find a useful reliever for him, it might be an interesting direction for us to go. And the Marlins actually have offered a couple of marginally interesting players. One is Adam Fuchs, 26-year-old catcher, great personality, pretty good defensively. Looks like he's going to be a below average major league hitter, but he's durable. He's been in the majors for a year. Last season at this point, he was their starting catcher. Certainly a below average offensive player, but he's got 2 option years left. And with Bolden and Aguiar, our starter and our backup, or our starter against righties and our starter against lefties, depending on how you look at defining their roles as catcher, are the only 2 catchers we have on our 40-man roster at this point. And I like the fact that Fuchs is good defensively. Looks like he's going to be acceptable offensively, and he's got 2 option years left, so he's a pretty good insurance policy as a AAA catcher for us. But I also actually like Chris Rutledge is a left-handed arm. I've talked about the fact we'd like to find some left-handed arms. He's been pretty average-ish in his limited action of 91 innings pitched at the major league level. That includes 10 starts, and I don't think he's a starter with that 40 changeup as his 3rd pitch. But he throws pretty hard. I think as a reliever, he would be an interesting prospect, and he's got 3 option years left. So I would love to somehow put a package together where I can get both Fuchs and Rutledge for Falcone. I don't think they'll go for that. We certainly would in a second if they would give us both of them. So we're going to work on seeing if we can put something together to get us at least one of those players, if not both of them. I'd feel better if we can get both of them, but odds are we're going to have to give up something else to make that happen. Yeah, not surprisingly, to get both Fuchs and Rutledge, we'd have to throw in a pretty big-time player, either 2034 Rookie of the Year Victor Avelar, 2035 home run leader Jonathan Ojeda, Jesus Mercado, who we just picked up to be an important reliever for us, or Mike McNeil, a 24-year-old who hit 15 home runs in 184 at-bats in the majors last year. So certainly adding a reliever like Rutledge isn't worth any of those guys to us, but going to still see if maybe we can piece together something to get both Fuchs and Rutledge by giving up some other guys besides Falcone who are a little more organizational depth for us. And I think we have something pieced together for the Marlins to consider that will get us both Fuchs and Rutledge. Falcone is obviously the cornerstone of it, but as we've talked about a lot, we've got a glut of corner outfielders. Center fielder Willie Brathwaite is a guy who made it up to Double-A last year, but he's already 24 years old. Doesn't really profile as a major league hitter. Decent glove in the outfield, but just don't see him having much of a role on our team for the future. Alex Cervantes is a first baseman who certainly profiles as an average-ish major league hitter, not a great glove. Had an excellent year in high A ball last year, hit .327 with 27 home runs, and was the most valuable player of, I guess that would be the Midwest League. But even though he was a second-round pick of ours back in 2029, I just don't see him having a prominent role at the major league level for us. And then Masaki Kubo, who has been a outfielder in Omaha for us the last couple of years, came over from Japan and has played in AAA for us the last couple of years. He's 32 years old. He's just organizational depth. Now, even with all of them, there's no guarantees that they do it, but when you look at the Make This Work Now, there's a lot of options there. So I tend to think that Theo Epstein will come back to us and say that he's going to do that deal. Although, quite honestly, if there's a half-star player with a bad personality who happens to be in our system that would make this deal work, I'd rather just add it in and make sure that I get the deal done. seems like most of the half-star players that he's interested in actually have decent personalities, and we definitely focus on making sure that we've got good personalities across our minor league system in general to help with player development as much as possible. Yeah, David James, he's been a huge disappointment. We could throw him in. He was a number one first-round pick of ours back only 4 seasons ago. He's had some injury issues, and he's fragile now. He's never gotten out of rookie ball, and you can see, looking at that profile, it's hard to imagine that he's ever going to do anything at the major league level at this point. Does have a good personality, but theoretically we could throw him in to guarantee that the deal gets done. There's just a lot of garbage players that we could certainly get the deal done with, but since they have good personalities, I'm not going to throw them in. I tend to think that he'll come back to us in a few days and go ahead and do this. And I think this would be a big win for us because we're, Falcone is a useful major league player, and I think Cervantes could be. But Fuchs gives us a third major league quality catcher in our organization, which is big for a team that's win now. And Rutledge, as I talked about, could definitely potentially make our team as a left-handed reliever. And they've both got minor league options yet if they don't make the major league team. So I think this would be a really nice trade for us. It's not the type of trade that's going to make headlines, but I think organizationally this would be a really nice trade if we can get it done. So we're going to go ahead and submit the offer to Mr. Epstein and the Marlins. And unfortunately, Epstein didn't go for the trade proposal, and he's actually asking for us to add in some pretty potentially useful players now. Definitely better than the half-star players that we were potentially going to be able to get this done for before. I'm not going to certainly put in a Dan Keogh or a Marco Estrada to get this trade done, but minor league left fielder Bill Aguilar. I guess it's a little more expensive for us to include him than before, but I do just want to get this trade done. Interesting that even he said Aguilar would get it done, and now it won't. So he's playing hardball with us, but as I talked about, we're getting players that are a lot more important to us this year and for the future than what we're giving up. So going to definitely try to figure out how to get something done here. So I added in Bill Aguilar, who he had said in his response to us would get the deal done, and it still wouldn't. I'm going to go ahead and submit it again. Hopefully we can get this deal done without too much more nonsense from the Marlins. And Epstein's back now saying it won't work. So I'm going to just try to rebuild something that'll get this done. I definitely want to make this trade. We may have to give up something a little bit better. Probably should have just put in those scrub players that he was looking for to guarantee that we got it done last time. But we'll make sure that we get something done. Olivio Lantada is probably the one who could do it. He's a great personality, but just not really quite a major league pitcher. He's been okay in Double-A the last few years, but he's 28 years old. He's going to be 29 early next year, and he's never made it up to Triple-A yet. So I don't feel great about throwing him in because I think he's better than the 32-year-old corner outfielder from Japan who we could have gotten the deal done with before, but he doesn't have a big role in our team, whereas I think both Fuchs and Rutledge potentially could be on the major league roster at some point next season, and the only one in this trade who fits the bill with that is Falcone. So I'm going to go ahead and get this trade done and get Fuchs and Rutledge on board with the Marlins. So with the trade for Rutledge, picking up Munoz in the Rule 5 draft, definitely had added a little bit of potential left-handed talent into the back end of our bullpen. Right now, the other big thing that we are waiting on hearing on is the offer we made to the left-handed pitcher Gabe Pryor. Still have heard nothing from him on that yet. Obviously would love to have him in the mix also as a potential arm in our bullpen next season. And we have heard back from Pryor now. He's leaning towards the offer. Hopefully we'll hear from him in the next week or so. And Gabe Pryor is on board, so feel good about that. Think that he could be a pretty useful arm for us out of the bullpen. He wants to be in the starting rotation, but we did not guarantee that to him, and we are going to actually go and force him to be a reliever for us, because I don't believe he is a starter at the major league level. So he may not be happy with that, but I think that he could be a pretty effective arm out of the bullpen for us this year. Gives us another lefty. So we are going to move Mr. Pryor right onto the major league secondary roster, and then we're also going to put him on the active roster. And you can see our secondary is now up to 40 with the moves that we've made. It's really primarily been adding to the bullpen through the addition of a couple of free agents in the case of Suarez and now Pryor. We also had the Rule 5 acquisition we made, and then we've made a number of trades to kind of bolster the bullpen too. And then we've also added Adam Fuchs onto the major league roster. The 40-man roster is kind of a third catcher for us behind Bolden and Aguiar. So I think we've kind of achieved our main goals for this offseason. Still definitely have money to spend, so we'll certainly continue to look for trade opportunities and continue to peruse the list of free agents over the next few months before the regular season begins. But I think the heavy lifting is probably done for this off season at this point. So with that, we are going to call it an episode. Would love to kind of hear your thoughts on what we've done down below. And in our next episode, we'll kind of jump right into spring training and preparing for the 2036 season. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.